The digital cry, present day. There's a woman who won't let you sleep at night. Her name is Heather Bish, and every time she opens TikTok, every time she stares into that little camera on her phone, she's not looking at you. She's looking through you, searching, hunting for the monster who stole her sister 25 years ago. It's coming on 21 years now, she says, into the void of the internet. And I'm getting real tired of waiting for you to stop being a coward. Pause. Breathe. Listen to what she says next. I want you to know I'm coming for you. I will not stop. I will not stop finding ways to find you. This is the story of Molly Anne Bish, born August 2nd, 1983. 16 years old, blue eyes, blonde hair, 5'7", 127 pounds. A high school student who loved kids, who loved swimming, who loved making people laugh. On June 27, 2000, she vanished from the face of the earth in broad daylight. No screams, no witnesses, just gone. Like something reached out from the woods and pulled her into the dark. And what Heather wants you to understand, what keeps her awake at night, filming those TikToks in the blue glow of her phone, is that the person who took Molly is still out there, still breathing, still walking among us. I will outlive you, Heather whispers into the camera. So before you meet your maker, come forward. But the killer hasn't come forward, not in 25 years, not through 6,700 tips, not through DNA tests and forensic advances and the largest missing persons investigation in Massachusetts history. So let me take you back to that summer, back to a small pond in Warren, Massachusetts, back to the last morning anyone saw Molly Bish alive. Because if you listen closely enough, if you let the shadows speak, you can still hear what happened that day. The day before, June 26th, 2000. The day before Molly disappeared, her mother saw something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Molly Bish. Remember that name. A mother's intuition is a powerful thing. Some call it paranoia. Some call it hysteria. But Molly Bish knew. She knew something was wrong. It was June 26th, 2000, a Monday. Molly drove Molly to her lifeguard shift at Comins Pond, just like she'd done dozens of times before. The pond, a small, quiet swimming hole in Warren, Massachusetts. Population, 5,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where terrible things aren't supposed to happen. But when they pulled into the parking lot that morning, Maggie noticed something. A white car, parked, engine off, and inside, a man. He had a mustache. He was just sitting there, smoking, not moving, not doing anything, just staring at the lifeguard station, staring at where Molly would be. Maggie gave him what she called a teacher stare. That look mothers give when they know something isn't right. The kind of look that says, I see you. I know you're here. Back off. But the man in the white car didn't look away. He didn't start his engine. He didn't drive off. He just kept staring. Through the smoke, through the windshield, staring. Maggie dropped Molly off and drove away. But that image, that man in that white car, burned itself into her mind like a photograph. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just seen something most people never see. She'd seen a predator, watching, waiting, hunting. That night, Molly went home. She had dinner with her family, her parents, John and Maggie, her older sister, Heather, her older brother, John Jr. They were a close family, the kind who moved from Detroit to rural Massachusetts to escape the violence of the city, to find peace, to find safety. Molly went to bed that night in her childhood home. She had no idea that in less than 12 hours she would cease to exist as the girl her family knew. She would become something else, a name, a case number, a ghost. The Vanishing, June 27th, 2000. June 27th, 2000, 9:50 a.m. Molly and her mother stopped at a convenience store. They needed supplies for Molly's shift, bottled water, snacks, the little things a lifeguard needs for a summer day at the pond. This stop took only a few minutes. The security camera captured the last footage of Molly Bish walking free. Grainy, black and white. A 16-year-old girl in a pink tank top and plaid boxer shorts, red, blue, and green. She was wearing a blue Nike one-piece bathing suit underneath, the kind with white lines running down the sides. She looked normal, happy even. She had no idea she was walking toward her own death. 9:58 a.m. Maggie dropped Molly off at Comins Pond. They stopped briefly at the Warren Police Department to pick up Molly's two-way radio, standard equipment for lifeguards. Then they drove the short distance to the beach. There was a sand truck there. Workers unloading sand for the beach. They saw Molly arrive. They saw Magi drive away. And then, 13 minutes later, Molly was gone. 13 minutes. That's all it took. 13 minutes for a 16-year-old girl to vanish from a public beach in broad daylight. 10:20 a.m. The first children arrived for their swimming lessons. Parents, kids in bathing suits carrying towels, the kind of mundane summer morning that happens in every small town across America. But when they reached the beach, they noticed something wrong. No lifeguard. The lifeguard chair, empty. Molly's shoes left behind on the sand. Her first aid kit, untouched. Her lunch bag sitting exactly where she'd placed it. Her two-way police radio, still there, crackling with static. Everything Molly had brought with her remained. Everything except Molly. The parents looked at each other, confused at first, then concerned. Where was the lifeguard? Did she go to the bathroom? Did she run back to her car? But there was no car. Molly didn't drive herself. She'd been dropped off. Someone called the police. Warren Police Chief Ronald Syriac arrived at the scene. He later described what he found. Molly's chair, her lunch bag, her first aid kit, and the two-way police radio was right there, intact, undisturbed. So we have no clues whatsoever. No clues, no signs of struggle, no blood, no torn clothing, nothing. It was as if Molly Bish had simply ceased to exist, as if something had reached down from the sky and plucked her from reality itself. But Maggie Bish knew better. She knew about the man in the white car. She told police immediately. There was a man watching yesterday. He was staring. Something was wrong. The police began their investigation. At first, and this is where the horror deepens, they thought Molly might have drowned. They searched the pond. Divers went into the water looking for her body beneath the surface. But Heather Bish, Molly's sister, knew this was wrong. She preferred pool swimming, Heather would later say. Molly was terrified of ponds, of what might lurk beneath dark water. She would never have gone in voluntarily. The police also theorized that maybe Molly had run off. Teenage rebellion. Maybe she went to meet friends. But again, her shoes, her radio, her beeper. In the year 2000, before cell phones were ubiquitous, teenagers lived and died by their beepers. Molly never went anywhere without hers. She wouldn't have left it behind, not willingly. As the hours turned to days, the search expanded. It became the largest and most expensive missing persons investigation in Massachusetts history. Hundreds of volunteers, thousands of man-hours, bloodhounds, helicopters, thermal imaging. But Comins Pond is surrounded by dense forest, miles and miles of woods, and in those woods, in the shadows between the trees, something had taken Molly Bish. Something had dragged her away from sunlight and safety. Into darkness. The investigation would continue for 3 years. 3 years of searching, 3 years of hoping, 3 years of Maggie Bish waking up every morning and wondering if today would be the day her daughter came home. The discovery, June 2003. In the late fall of 2002, a hunter was walking through an area called Whiskey Hill in Palmer, Massachusetts, about 5 miles from Comins Pond, about 5 miles from where Molly vanished. He saw something in the leaves, something blue, fabric. He picked it up and noticed it looked like a bathing suit, the kind a lifeguard might wear, but the hunter didn't report it immediately. He mentioned it to someone in passing. That someone mentioned it to someone else. And in May 2003, 6 months later, that information finally reached police. May 12, 2003. Police launched a massive search of Whiskey Hill. Over 200 searchers, hand searches, shoulder-to-shoulder formation, searching through challenging, dense terrain. The kind of forest that swallows secrets. They searched every day for weeks. And on June 3, 2003, almost 3 years to the day since Molly disappeared, they found her. Human remains, scattered by animals, time, the elements. It took 6 more days for forensic analysis to confirm what everyone already knew in their hearts. Molly Bish was dead. June 9, 2003. The official identification came through. The case changed from a missing persons investigation to a murder investigation. Molly's family, who had held on to hope for 3 agonizing years, now had to accept a new reality. Their daughter, their sister, was never coming home. "We didn't find Molly for 3 years," Magi later said. "It was horrendous." Heather Bish still remembers the day her sister's remains were found. A hunter mentioned discovering a blue bathing suit while talking in a bar, and a former officer recognized the description. He reported it, and the search began. "There was some resolution in that," Heather shared on TikTok. "My heart aches for families who still don't know. I hope they all get their missing loved ones back. Not knowing is a terrible, terrible feeling. But knowing brought its own pain. Now they understood Molly hadn't run away or drowned. She'd been taken, abducted, murdered, and left in the woods. And the person who did it was still out there. Over the years, investigators identified several suspects. Men with violent pasts, men with connections to the area, men who fit the description of the person Maggie Bish saw in that white car. Let me introduce you to them. Let me show you the faces of potential evil. Rodney Stanger had lived near Warren for more than 20 years. A year after Molly was killed, he suddenly moved to Florida. He had access to a white car like the one seen before her disappearance. He fished at Comins Pond. He hunted in the Whiskey Hill woods, where Molly's remains were found. In 2009, he murdered his longtime girlfriend, Crystal Morrison. After her death, Crystal's sister begged investigators to look at him for Molly's case. Police questioned him and searched his property, but he was never charged. He's still alive, serving time in Florida. Then there was Gerald Battistoni, a convicted rapist with a violent history going back decades. He had been in the area where Molly was found and looked disturbingly similar to the man in the composite sketch. 2 men, 2 shadows over the case. And still, no answers. In November 2011, newspaper articles identified him as a potential suspect in Molly's murder. Shortly after, Battistoni attempted suicide in prison. He died on November 11, 2014, at age 52, taking his secrets, if he had any, to the grave. Francis Frank Sumner Sr., a convicted rapist and kidnapper. He operated auto body shops in Spencer, Leicester, and Worcester, all areas near Warren. He had a long criminal history, multiple convictions for crimes against women. In 2021, Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early named Sumner as a person of interest. By then, Sumner had been dead for 5 years. He died in 2016. Investigators tried to test his DNA posthumously by obtaining a sample from his son, Francis Sumner Jr. The Bish family waited, hoped, prayed this would finally be the answer. In 2022, Heather Bish posted a TikTok video. Her face said everything before she even spoke. The tests that we have been waiting on for the last year have come back not as a match for Frank Sumner. It's really disappointing. Not a match. Another dead end. Another suspect eliminated. Another year of hope turning to dust. And then there are the others, the men whose names have been whispered but never confirmed. Ed Fett, Molly's boss at the Parks Department, allegedly buying rope and duct tape the morning of her disappearance, allegedly failing a polygraph test. But then again, 10 other people failed polygraph tests too. David Pouliot, named as a person of interest in 2012 in the murder of Holly Pyrenean, another young girl who disappeared from the same area in 1993. Pouliot died in 2003. Another ghost suspect. Another dead end. And here's what makes this case so terrifying. The timeline was impossibly tight. 13 minutes. From 9:58 a.m. when Molly was dropped off to 10:11 a.m. when she vanished. 13 minutes for someone to approach her, abduct her, transport her, without anyone seeing, without anyone hearing. It was a narrow time window, Heather said. Wouldn't have time to drive far, which means whoever took Molly knew the area intimately, knew the back roads, knew the woods, knew exactly where to go and exactly how to disappear. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned, calculated. The man in the white car wasn't there by accident the day before. He was scouting, watching, preparing. In the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab, 267 pieces of evidence from Molly Bish's case sit sealed, each one a possible answer. Investigators collected everything they could from both Whiskey Hill and Comins Pond. In 2014, a private investigator found a buried bag holding plaid boxer shorts, eerily similar to the pair Molly wore. Whether they were hers has never been confirmed, but as forensic technology evolves, evidence that once said nothing may finally speak. Heather Bish has fought for familial DNA legislation. She literally wrote the bill herself, pushed it through Massachusetts legislature, because she knows that somewhere in those 267 pieces of evidence is the answer. The name, the face, the killer. Over the past 25 years, investigators have received more than 6,700 tips, 6,700 potential leads, people calling the anonymous tip line, people sending emails, people coming forward with fragments of information, suspicions, theories. Most led nowhere. Some led to new suspects. None have led to an arrest, because the killer, whoever they are, has stayed silent. Hidden, protected perhaps by time, by death, by fear, by loyalty. The sisters' promise, Heather's crusade. Heather Bish was 20 years old when her sister disappeared. She's now 45. She spent more of her life searching for Molly's killer than she spent living with Molly. Every single year my sister's not there, Heather says. I'm shopping and I see things I think she would like. Or I wonder if Molly would like this now, or if she'd be into the same hobbies that I have, or music that I'm into. Molly would be 42 years old now. She might have married, had children, become an aunt to Heather's kids. Grown old alongside her sister, but she never got that chance. She's frozen forever at 16. Forever young. Forever the girl in the lifeguard certification photo with the bright smile and the whole world ahead of her. In 2021, Heather downloaded TikTok. She'd spent 2 decades working with police, with private investigators, with legislators, fighting in the traditional ways. But those traditional ways hadn't brought her sister's killer to justice. Every year on June 27th, the Bish family holds a vigil at Comins Pond. They gather at 7 p.m. at the Warrentown gazebo. Then they walk together to the beach, to the place where Molly was last seen, where her shoes still sit in their memory, where the lifeguard chair stands empty. Molly Bish, now in her 70s, attends every year. "You can't give up," she says, "because we promised Molly we'd never forget her, never let her down." Heather speaks at these vigils. She tells Molly's story. She keeps her sister's name alive. She reminds the community, reminds the world, that somewhere, someone knows what happened. Someone saw something. Someone is protecting the killer. "There's not just one bad guy," Heather says. "They don't look like monsters on the outside of society. They're right here. We need to be really less complacent with abusive behaviors." Because that's the terrifying truth. Molly's killer doesn't look like a monster. They look like anyone. A neighbor, a co-worker, a friend, someone who walks through grocery stores and attends community events and blends into society as if they never destroyed a family. Never took a 16-year-old girl and left her bones scattered in the woods. The call, what we can do. Listen to me carefully. If you live in central Massachusetts, if you lived there in 2000, if you knew someone who acted strangely that summer, if you remember a white car, a mustached man, someone who suddenly moved away, someone who changed their behavior after June 27th, 2000, you can remain anonymous. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to testify. You just have to share what you know. Maybe you worked at an auto body shop with Frank Sumner. Maybe you knew his schedule, his vehicles, his associates, his habits. Maybe you remember Rodney Stanger, where he went, who he talked to, what he said about that summer in 2000. Maybe you saw something at Comins Pond that day, a white car speeding away, a man walking quickly from the woods, something that seemed insignificant at the time but has bothered you for 25 years. Molly Bish deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. And somewhere, in someone's memory, in someone's conscience, is the information that will finally solve this case. Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early's office continues to investigate. Massachusetts State Police detectives persist in their work with the crime laboratory. They're examining evidence, pursuing leads, waiting for that one tip that changes everything. With the passage of time, the DA's office says, witnesses or those with knowledge of a crime are sometimes more willing to come forward. Maybe you were afraid in 2000. Afraid of retaliation, afraid of getting involved, afraid of what you knew. But it's been 25 years. People change, circumstances change, fear fades. And Heather Bish, along with everyone who loves true crime, who follows unsolved cases, who believes in justice, is waiting, watching, hoping. "I will not be giving up," Heather says. "Not in my lifetime, and I will outlive you. So before you meet your maker, come forward. Give up. Turn yourself into the Mass State Police, or keep waiting in your prison as I get closer and closer." And then she says the words that should haunt Molly's killer. "I'm coming for you. I'm coming." This is where Molly Bish's story stands today, unfinished, unresolved, a family still searching, a killer still free. Evidence waiting in a lab for science to catch up to justice. But stories like this don't end. They echo, they ripple, they spread through TikTok videos and YouTube documentaries and conversations in comments sections. They become part of collective memory, collective responsibility. Because if you're watching this, if you've made it to the end, then you're part of this story now too. You know Molly's name. You know what happened. You know someone out there has answers. So share this. Talk about it. Keep Molly's name alive. Keep pressure on the investigation. Keep the spotlight burning, because monsters hide in darkness, and the only way to find them is to flood every shadow with light. Molly Anne Bish. Born August 2nd, 1983. Disappeared June 27th, 2000. Found June 9th, 2003. Forever 16. Forever waiting for justice.